Thank you everyone who is attending our webinar today. We are so excited to have you join us. And thanks to those who are watching our recording. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day. So today's focus from our Master's in Bioethics and Medical Humanities program is really to explore health beyond science. I am joined by Dr. Eileen Anderson and also Dr. Jonathan Sadowski. And the focus of this is really going to be on our medicine, society, and culture concentration. So I am Dr. Leah Jeanette. I am the director of the Master's in Bioethics and Medical Humanities. I'm also an alum of this program. So it holds a special place in my heart as a student as well. But I do want to allow Dr. Anderson and Dr. Sadowski to just introduce themselves and talk about a little bit about kind of their involvement, and they created the MSc concentration. So I really want them to be able to talk a lot about this and turn it over to them. So Dr. Anderson, do you want to do a brief introduction? And then Dr. Sadowski, you can do that, and we can dive into the agenda and we can go forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeanette. It's such a privilege and a joy to be here to talk about medicine, society, and culture, and the MA in Bioethics and Medical Humanities at Case Western Reserve. I have the privilege to serve as Director of Education for our programs in Bioethics and Medical Humanities at the School of Medicine at Case Western Reserve. I am also, together with Dr. Sadowski, the founding director of the Medicine, Society, and Culture concentration that has been running in the program since 2016-17. I am also the Ann Templeton Zimmerman Professor in Bioethics and the director of the Center for Medicine, Society, and Culture, and delighted to be a faculty member in our Department of Bioethics. And I am so happy to be joined by my collaborator and medical historian, Dr. Jonathan Sadowski.
So you can see my titles there, so I won't repeat them. I've devoted virtually all of my research career to studying the situation of mental health, mental illness in society, and how it's treated, how it's understood, and how it differs by culture. I also have strong teaching interests in the history of epidemic disease, the role of race in medicine, and I teach courses on all of these subjects. And with Dr. Anderson, I co-teach the core course of the MSc concentration, and we have a great time. And we try to show you in that class a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, which is the gains to be had by looking at health, sickness, medicine from a broad range of disciplinary perspectives, and in particular, how these different perspectives, different disciplinary perspectives, change when you add them to each other.
Well said.
So for our webinar, we'll talk just briefly about Case Western Reserve on our School of Medicine, and then we're going to dive into medical humanities and social medicine. We'll talk about our master's program. We'll talk a little bit about application process and deadlines, student assistantships, and financial aid, and then we'll leave it open for Q&A at the end. If you do have questions, you are welcome to submit them as we go. We will save them for the end, but feel free to submit them at any point as we are presenting. So Case Western Reserve is a large university. We're located in Cleveland, Ohio, and our Department of Bioethics is in the School of Medicine. Our School of Medicine is ranked #1 in Ohio and 24 in the US, according to US News and World Report. And there's a couple of different ways to rank research and funding sources. And I believe it's Blue Ridge that most recently ranked as number 22 for NIH funding. And the reason why I highlight that, when it comes to funding and research, it's not just about where you get your money from, but what I think it highlights, especially when bioethics gets involved, is the interdisciplinary nature of what results. And so while we are the School of Medicine, we are collaborating with people outside of our department, outside of our school, across the city even. So at neighboring institutions and hospitals, we are very much interprofessional and interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary when it comes to the work we're doing. And I think that's really important. In addition to, yes, we have lots of money coming in to support the research work, but it's how the research work is being done that I think is really important to highlight. And you'll see that as we talk more about the MSc concentration and the work that's being done. So I'm going to throw the question out to Dr. Anderson and Dr. Sadowski. So what are medical humanities and social medicine? And for a follow-up question, why do these matter? I think that's a great place for us to start. And, keep in mind that it's a 30-minute webinar because that question could go on for hours.
And years. So Dr. Sadowski, why don't you start us off talking about what are the medical humanities?
Well, the humanities are the disciplines, I won't name them all, but philosophy, literature, history, and the medical humanities, or sometimes more broadly known as the health humanities. I myself regard these terms as interchangeable. Some people debate that. I don't want to get into that right now. The point is, we study sickness, health, healing through the lens of these disciplines, through the lens of philosophy, through the lens of literary criticism, narratology. Why do these matter? Well, there's a lot of reasons why they matter. One thing that's often touted about the medical humanities is the idea that studying these subjects creates more empathetic, more caring doctors. And there's some evidence that that is actually the case. But we think actually beyond that, that is not the limit to what we regard as this. But we think that these disciplines are actually fundamental to understanding the experience of health, sickness, and healing. And that if you, for example, understand how patient narratives are constructed and understood, you have a better understanding of what the experience of sickness is. And I think that matters not just for clinicians. I think it matters for patients. I think it matters for legal institutions. And I would also, I guess I could go on, as Leah rightly said, but I think I want to close by saying that, one of the reasons why it's good to do this at Case Western Reserve University is that there are lots of programs in medical humanities. They've been springing up all over. There are also a number of programs in social medicine. There are not that many that try to bring them together. And we do. And I think it really makes a difference. I think Dr. Anderson is going to talk a little bit about what social medicine means in this context, what we mean by it. But I think we can also talk about a little bit about why merging it with the medical humanities makes a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And in thinking about what is social medicine, sometimes called medical social sciences, health social sciences, it is, similar to what Dr. Sadowski said about the humanities. We're taking perspectives from the social sciences. So I have degrees in training in anthropology and psychology. There are many more. And we're using those lenses, those modes of analysis, those theoretical constructs, and we're applying them to questions, as Dr. Sadowski said, about health, healing, illness, suffering, and issues of thriving across the human life cycle. So social medicine brings in other levels of analytic tools. So we're looking at things like the structural, political, economic context of what ends up distilling down into someone's subjective and even biological experience. We are trying to understand what is the society like in which someone is living and interacting with medical institutions and families and cultures, etc. So we're looking at these various layers of structural positioning that ends up impacting individual experience. So again, those might be governmental, they might be policy, they might be societal, they might be cultural, they might be religious. They might have to do with occupations or other kinds of identity groups. And then when we start to look at human behavioral science and get down to an individual level, really, so often there is an overlay with the humanities and with other modes of understanding what we might call illness experience, which have a lot to do with health outcomes, and human behaviors of how do you access healthcare, et cetera. So in its most basic form, medical humanities and social medicine really encompass so many aspects of the non-biological aspects of health that end up really shaping our health trajectories, our care trajectories, and our outcomes.
So, given kind of that framework for what these are and why these matter, why then study bioethics and medical humanities together, right? Why are we looking at a program like ours, more specifically?
Well, that's a great question. And at the core, whether we're talking about the ethical components, the humanistic, the social, behavioral science, all of these fields and all of these ways of looking at these issues and problems that impact us all, they have values at the core, right? What are you going to value when it comes down to it? And what happens when we have conflicting values, such as do we want individuals to have autonomy in choosing the best care for them, but that can sometimes come in conflict with a value like social justice and thinking about how do we distribute and give access to everyone certain kinds of, let's say, medical intervention or healthcare. So bringing these lenses together allows us to ask questions reflected in this slide. Like so often we have, great technology, we have AI, we have all of these technologies, but the big questions are, should we intervene? And when and how and for whom? So looking at these value-laden questions can lead us to additional innovation, can help resolve different kind of conflicts that come up in clinical care in society and in policy and practice questions. So many of us in the department and at the university are also asking questions about thinking about justice, thinking about respect for persons. And this transcends both the research that you were talking about and the clinical practice. And we're very lucky in this program that we're able to expose our master students to what some of these questions look like hands-on in clinical situations in our area hospitals or communities and in all kinds of research situations coming from these various disciplines we've been discussing.
So if I could just add an example. So you can study in bioethics the importance of informed consent. We would all agree, somebody in a research study, for example, people who are participants should be informed of the consequences of their participation, and they should consent. But what about if their culture or their history as a community means that they have a different understanding of what informed means or what consent means? And that's the kind of thing that an understanding of, say, anthropology or history can bring that an abstract bioethics or a sort of disembodied bioethics can't answer by itself. And so as Dr. Anderson said, one of the really attractive things about our program that marks it off from many other programs is the clinical hours. So think about what you're getting here. You're getting social science, you're getting humanities, you're getting bioethics, and you're getting very close textured clinical experience.
So for someone who's thinking about studying bioethics and medical humanities, then how does it assist in a career path, right? Because it's one thing to study these things and get excited by them, but how does it build into that goal of what someone's career might look like?
Well, one of the things I love about our program, I'm going to use the image of a figure like an hourglass figure, where we love when we have a class of students who are coming from all different backgrounds. So they might be coming from biology or chemistry or biomedical engineering or literature or psychology, anthropology. We get a wide range of fields that people are coming from. So there's a diversity of backgrounds. There's a diversity of passions that are brought to the table when people enter this program. Then we have a very intensive 9-month, typically 1-year program, although it can be done in other ways, experience where people are getting very, similar, although there's a lot of choice within that, coursework that is personalizable. So if someone knows for sure they're headed to medical school and they want to make sure that they are understanding some aspect, let's say informed consent, because they want to do research also, or they know they have a passion for pediatrics and they want to make sure they're really understanding pediatric ethics. Who is our pediatric population today? How might we have to understand migration and culture, or socioeconomic class, or ethnic, racial backgrounds? That student can make sure that they have the background they need and shape their coursework to go on to some sort of clinical profession. But that said, there are many pathways. So for our students who know they want to go on to something like a PhD, really getting immersed and having spent time inside a clinic, that gives them a whole other layer to bring as I just had wonderful alumni notes from some of our students who are completing PhDs in sociology and anthropology just this week. And it was delightful to hear how this program impacted their future study. We have people who go into all of the specialties reflected here. And one group of students we get in every cohort is a group who says, I am passionate about health. I know I want to do something in health or healthcare. I really want to help people, but they don't know exactly what that looks like. This program and the way the curriculum is structured gives them exposure to really see all these jobs they never knew existed before, learn all these ways of thinking, maybe a new field that they didn't know existed before. And what we find is, as we scaffold the year in their coursework and in their advising, is that it's a great program for discernment for those who are coming in not quite sure. And so then to complete the image of the hourglass, our students will go on to many different pathways and leave with a tremendous network of colleagues to draw on should they need.
So our master's program, as has been said, is 1 year. For most students that do the program full time, it's 2 semesters. We do have part-time options. When it's done through those 2 semesters, for 30 credits, it's about 15 each semester, which is a completely reasonable kind of schedule for our students. The program was built that way. What's great and what's been discussed so far is the customizability of the courses. There is some core courses that all students have to take, and we'll see that in the next slide, but there's 13 and a half credits that are just purely electives, that students get to choose what they're taking. And within those, you have the opportunity to concentrate in certain things like medicine, society, and culture, other concentrations, or simply just take the electives that you're interested in and not choose a concentration. We
And
also have I was going to say, we also have opportunity for short-term study abroad courses, personalized advising, and dual degree options for students that might be interested in that as well. Dr. Sadowski, were you going to add something?
Yes, sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to add that I wanted to stress that these electives do not only have, they're not restricted to the bioethics department. And one of the strengths of this program is that you can take courses, sociology, in the law school, all across the university, there are allowed electives. And there are strengths in these areas across the university.
So it's an
Absolutely.
excellent point.
Yeah, thank you. So we actually offer 4 different tracks through the program at this time. Students can do the traditional program, which does not include a concentration per se, and that is where you get those 13.5 elective credits to take the kind of courses that will fulfill your goals in your educational pathway. And then we offer 3 concentrations at this point. So some things are consistent across, regardless of if you're doing the traditional program or one of our concentrations. That is our 2-semester, big 6 credit each semester foundations classes, where you're getting foundations of bioethics and medical humanities 1 and 2. You're looking at all the major bioethical issues from multiple lenses in ethics, humanities, social sciences, and arts across the human life cycle in the fall. And then in the spring, you're really looking at a whole set of more contemporary issues, from research ethics to public health. Then all of our students, as we've mentioned, are doing clinical ethics rotations for at least 1 semester. Most students will do 2 semesters, and that is 80 hours of clinical rotations, one of our 4 area hospitals each semester. And all students will do a capstone working with an advisor on a topic of their passion and choice. And that is in the spring, so you can kind of figure it out in the fall. For our concentrations, we have a parallel structure where you're adding a foundational seminar, you're adding kind of intellectual breadth or contemporary topics classes, and you have in the spring, there are options in, for example, the MSc concentration, that you can do your clinical ethics rotations in the same way you might if you were doing a traditional track, or there are reasons why you might do a medicine, society, and culture practicum instead. So for example, some of our students who are going on to a PhD really want to be embedded, getting practical experience in a research program where they might be working on a publication. Or we've had students work in our university-related free clinic, or at the Department of Public Health, or other types of nonprofit organizations. There's many different kinds of choices. You would work with your advisor and with us to shape what would be best for you. In medicine, society, and culture, as Dr. Sadowski mentioned, he and I teach an intensive seminar in the fall that is required. We also have an intellectual breadth seminar experience where each student can choose to attend an array of events across humanities, social sciences, and arts related to medical humanities and social medicine in some way, which is a very fun experience for most students, and expands not only their understanding of these fields, but also gets them to understand the rich resources of our university and our region, our museums, our theaters, our other academic institutions, our academic hospitals, etc. Then our students do get to choose electives that might be related to their interests in medicine, society, and culture. And as Dr. Sadowski pointed out, many of those are offered within our department, across the School of Medicine, or in one of the other 7 schools here at the university. And then in the spring, as I mentioned, students can do clinical rotations. They can kind of focus in on an area that they have a particular passion about, or there are different ways to shape practica to help your trajectory as you move through the program, depending on your future goals.
So I do want to just quickly highlight our clinical ethics rotations, which we've mentioned. We have 4 teaching hospitals here in Cleveland, and we have partnerships with all of them. And so our students are able to spend 80 hours each semester for a total of 160 during their time here. They get to see 2 out of the 4 hospitals, 1 public, 1 private. It's an amazing opportunity to spend time in the hospital setting, whether it's morning rounds, team rounds, consult team rounds, committee meetings, whether it's ethics committees, IRB meetings, transplant meetings, or going one-on-one with healthcare professionals, whether it's physicians in the emergency department for an 8-hour evening shift in a level 1 trauma, or going with a social worker or a genetic counselor. There's a huge variety, and each of the hospitals have their different specialty areas as well. And so we do our best to match students to the hospital that also makes the most sense based on their schedule and based on their interest.
And we love that they get also the culture of a particular hospital, because each one is different than the other.
Yeah, by the second semester, students really get to see that cultural difference of the institutions. It's pretty amazing. And then more specific about cultural perspectives is doing a short-term study abroad elective. We have courses that travel for 1 to 2 weeks, and they are typically held either winter break, spring break, or in May, just as after courses let out. And this is an opportunity for students to be embedded in a different country, and students have the opportunity to do site visits, hear from expert speakers and partners that we've developed over the years. And topics range all different things, whether it's focusing on health and environmental ethics in our national parks, to issues of death and dying in the Netherlands, or drugs and detention in the Netherlands, or issues of access to healthcare in countries like Costa Rica. There's kind of a wide variety in all these different courses. So in terms of the application, for students who are interested, there's a pretty streamlined application. We ask for you to fill out the application online. Unofficial transcripts are absolutely fine. Your CV or your resume, 2 letters of recommendation, your statement of purpose. What we really want to see in that essay is 1 to 2 pages. What is your interest in bioethics and medical humanities, and how does it potentially fit into your career path? And that can include that you're looking for discernment opportunities. You don't have to have it all figured out as you're writing that statement of purpose. We're all still works in progress, so we're all still figuring it out. That is perfectly fine. Graduate test scores like GREs or MCATs are optional, so that it's not a requirement. If you're an international applicant, we do ask that if you went to a non-English speaking place, that you provide the adequate translation and English tests. And if you are a current PACE student and you are looking to join what is now called the Combined Bachelor Master's Degree Program, formerly called IGS, that you also include a PPOS form. If you have more
And I will just say, while it's fine to start the application process with unofficial transcripts, we will need official transcripts by the time you're admitted by our School of Graduate Studies to be a student officially.
Yeah, excellent point, Dr. Anderson. In terms of financial aid and student assistantships, we do have a great opportunity for students. They can apply for something called student assistantships. These are highly competitive opportunities to get involved in teaching, research, or administration within our department. And in exchange, students can receive a partial tuition waiver. We consider both need and merit for our students because both of those things are important to us. And if you're interested in learning more, we'd be happy to talk with you about that. We also have traditional financial aid available through the university. And more details on the exact tuition information is available through Graduate Studies, who sets the tuition for us. In terms of timeline, the next deadline that's coming up would be for the combined bachelor master's degree, formerly IGS, which is April 1st. Our priority 2 deadline is May 15th, so there's a little bit of time, but as we all know, time goes quickly and May 15th will be here before we know it. Final deadline will be August 1st, if you're planning to join us this upcoming fall. I do want to get time for questions, so I'm looking to see if there were any questions.
Dr. Jeanette, while you're checking that, I just have to make one more point about our region. This is probably because I am a native Clevelander, lived on the East Coast and West Coast, and I am delighted to be back here. Our university is sandwiched in a rich cultural environment right around us called University Circle, with museums and restaurants and all kinds of exciting opportunities for theater and music and parks, a national park not far away, the beautiful, beautiful lake we have that you can see from parts of campus that is easy to get to. Quality of life in and around Cleveland is really fantastic. It often is underrated if you haven't visited, but there is so much to do, and so much of it ends up discounted or free for Case Western Reserve students. Sporting events, I was just talking to some students who are planning an outing to the Cavs. So there's a huge array of student life while you're also getting a top-notch education.
It's an excellent point to be made. So I'm not seeing any questions through the Q&A. I know we had a pre-submitted question, and it's actually a common one that we get. We did talk a little bit about this earlier, but I think it's worth revisiting. And that's what makes our Bioethics and Medical Humanities program unique, because there are many out there. And I know that's kind of a loaded question and we're over time, but if there's a way to succinctly answer that question, I'd love to hear from Dr. Anderson and Dr. Sadowski of what helps our program be unique and stand out.
I'm going to piggyback very quickly on what's been said already. And that is to highlight both the depth and the breadth of what is available here. So Dr. Sadowski talked about the unique positionality of our program juxtaposing humanities and social sciences. And to that, I would add bioethics, clinical medicine, research, and the arts. And having experts across the university and virtually every department who focus on some kind of health or medical issue, because Cleveland is such a medical city, it kind of organically grew up with expertise in medical anthropology, medical sociology. We have amazing medical rhetoricians. We have arts oriented toward thinking about narrative and health questions actually offered in departments like our music department. Obviously, we have Dr. Sadowski and some unbelievably rich medical history, including the 3rd best medical history museum in the world based on our campus. So being able to pull whatever your topic of passion is, being able to really understand all of these different analytic lenses and having mentorship and opportunity to have exposure to what might this look like across all these dimensions brings such a rich educational environment to and for students. More, it's very unusual at a master's level that you get this kind of deep dive into both clinical medicine and research. And through our assistantship program, many of our students will also get training and access to learning how to assist in teaching, which is an incredible skill of communication in almost any field you go into after this program. So there is also this incredible balance of book learning and hands-on opportunities for experience.
Well,
I-
I want to thank you. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Sadowski.
I was only gonna say, I can't add to that. That says it all.
It's a great answer. So I want to thank everyone who's joined us today. Dr. Anderson, Dr. Sadowski, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your insight into the Medicine, Society, and Culture concentration and our overall Masters in Bioethics and Medical Humanities program. And thank you to those who have attended live and to those who are watching our recording.
And please feel free to reach out if you have questions that crop up. Our email is the best way to reach us, bioethics@case.edu. And you can feel free to ask any question or set up a conversation with us about the program, about if it might be the right fit for you. Sometimes we will pre-screen students if they're wondering if this is a program that would be a good fit, or if it were likely to be a successful application. So we're here. We would love to hear from you. And Dr. Jeanette, thank you so much for hosting this informative webinar today.
You're welcome. Thanks to everyone, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Thank you.